Welcome to the Fintech Scaling Show. This podcast is sponsored by Scale Up Consulting, helping fintech startups accelerate customer acquisition and set up business operations to scale systematically. When you're ready to grow, reach out to us at richard@scaleupconsulting.co. Now, over to the show with Richard Doty, founder and host.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Today on the show, we have Lika, founder at Lendonomy. Hey, Lika, great to have you on the show. How's everything going today?
Hi, Richard. Everything is absolutely amazing. Thank you.
Awesome. So let's kick off the show, and maybe you can give my listeners a bit of background about yourself.
Absolutely. My name is Anzhelika Osmanova. The short version of the name is Lika. I'm the first generation immigrant to Norway and an entrepreneur, founder of Lendonomy, which is a fintech startup. And recently I have been featured in Forbes as a 30 under 30 laureate. That's a little bit about myself. I've been into startups for 7 years, I think, in a row. Before, I worked in Hudley, which is a computer vision startup, which I brought to market in collaboration with Google. So right now, building my own company and feeling happy about that.
Awesome. And maybe let's get into a bit of detail about Lendonomy, and if you can provide us some background as to, maybe how the idea came about and also what you guys bring to market.
Lendonomy is a social network for money. In simpler terms, it is a mobile application that allows young people around the world to build a globally verifiable credit history. So what we do there is that we allow our users to borrow and lend small amounts of money to each other in a Tinder-like interface. And then we take this information to blockchain and save it as a credit profile of a user so that the person could bring his or her credit history to any country he or she goes. The company started in an interesting way. I was a broke student living in Norway on a scholarship here. And the scholarship was not enough to meet my minimum basic needs. It was 4 times lower than the minimum salary.
Typical student life, maybe.
Typical, absolutely typical. Back then, I did not think that it was something that everybody had to go through. So for me, it was an interesting experience. I remember walking around the city, having no money to buy winter shoes, and it's Norway, remember? So I was thinking, I wish every Norwegian just gave me 1 crown. 1 crown is less than $1. So I wish that somebody that they would just give me the money and I could pay for my rent, buy winter shoes, and just eat normal food. I like to joke that I came to Norway 20 kilos ago because I was so much slimmer because I did not have enough food to eat. And afterwards, that idea just stuck in my head. I found a good job and everything was fine, but I just remembered that situation I was in, and I really wanted to solve it for other people who would come after me, because there are a lot of immigrants here as well, a lot of students, and young people generally go through this period, and it's hard. So in my experience, for example, I had to borrow a lot of money from my peers, and that was not a pleasant experience, I must say. Like it's always a bit embarrassing to go out to somebody and to ask the person for $25. It's okay if you do it once, but when you do it on a consistent basis, even though you always return the money back, there is something not truly right about the whole process. So I wanted to solve the embarrassment problem first, and then the credit history problem second. And this is how the idea came to be. I shared this idea with my mentor, and then she introduced me to a fintech accelerator here in Norway, and they loved the idea. So that's how it all started.
No, awesome. Great story. And tell me, what does the market look like right now? Are you guys having to adapt and maneuver because of what generally is going on around the globe?
Interestingly enough, not so much. Well, the microfinance market is growing at a rapid pace. The P2P lending market is growing as well. The pace of growth has changed a bit, but it did not affect us at all. It was the opposite experience for us. Many people started writing to us because we are preparing for the launch right now. So we are gathering people to our waiting list. And it was interesting to see that we started to get more and more people. I think that problem that we're currently facing with the pandemic has shown that it's hard to only live paycheck to paycheck. Many people lost jobs. Before, we focused only on students and young people, Generation Z. Right now, we see that our market is expanding. So even people in their 30s sign up for Lendonomy because they want to find alternative ways to finance their day. And microfinance organizations or credit cards are not always doing them a favor. So Lendonomy is a more ethical way and a more ecological way for them to build healthy relationships with credit.
You mentioned preparing for launch. I mean, maybe we can take a look at that. And how are you approaching launch and market entry? Are you solely focusing on Norway first and then other locations later? What's your strategy?
Norway is our testing market. Norway is a great testing market because the mentality here is that people always return the money back. The default rate is extremely low. So for us, it's a low risk market to enter and to test the waters in a positive scenario. But the Norwegian market is very small. So after the Norwegian market is tackled, we're going to go to other Scandinavian countries and then expand to the EU. And afterwards, the strategic goal is to get to the United States because this is where most of the problems are in this specific market. And we want to solve this problem. You also asked about how we approach the market. When it comes to working with the market, we work directly with people. We have extremely close relationships with our audience. We meet with those people who sign up to our waiting list. We let them test the app as is. So we have a beta version available for those people who sign up to our waiting list. And we ask them, what would you like? What you don't like? And then we fix everything they did not like and highlight everything they liked. I can give you an example. I think it's going to be interesting. A couple of weeks ago, we organized a testing session for students, and it was extremely paced. We had 3 days of testing in a row. And at the first day of testing, there were lots of bugs, and students were complaining about some button labels or words or, you name it. And we got a score from them, which was 6 out of 10, because we also measure what people think about us. The third day of testing was 8.8 out of 10. That was because we were fixing as we went and worked together with the market. And I can't imagine building a product for B2C without actually speaking to the customer. If you don't do that, it's just doomed to be a failure. So we're doing all we can to avoid failure and to make sure that people actually like our product.
Oh, very interesting that you're using those, I guess, methods to measure product vis market fit. I mean, how do you think that will play out when you go into maybe the bigger markets such as the US? Same methods or slightly altered?
I think we will slightly alter them, of course, because, it's one thing when you meet with, I don't know, like 10, 20, 50, 100 people, but it's totally different when you have hundreds of thousands of users. But at the same time, it's still possible to monitor the vibe around your app or any kind of product you're building. So you can still organize a focus group. You can invite people to meet you on Zoom. I never had a problem with people saying yes to my request to talk about Lendonomy and their experience with Lendonomy. I think it's important for all companies that the founder is proactive when it comes to interacting with people who use their products. When the CEO or the founder becomes too far away, then the company stops feeling the market, and then people start guessing inside the company. And when you start guessing and assuming, well, you are generally wrong. I was so freaking surprised when I spoke with the students about the app and about the feedback they gave. For example, about things that motivate them. I can give you also an interesting example. I remember sitting with, I think it was like 5 students or something. It was not a very big group. They were doing a student project on Lendonomy because Lendonomy is also an official part of curriculum in their schools. And we talked about how to make a financial product, which is so serious. It's about credit history. It's about your profile. It's lending. It's money. It's bloody serious. So I asked them, what do you guys think? What can we do to make sure that you enjoy it and you want to come back? Even if you don't need money, maybe you can read our educational content. Maybe you can do something else. Maybe you can help others. They told me an interesting thing. They told me, please use emojis.
Awesome.
And I was so surprised. I felt so old after they told me that, because I would never think about emojis being able to motivate people. And of course, we have this experience with Snapchat streaks and other things, and Grammarly also uses emojis a lot. But financial product, and please use emojis. It's going to motivate us. Okay, I will listen to you guys. But it's just an example, and you will find so many interesting things when you speak to your customers directly. And if you let them speak, if you're not afraid to hear honest feedback, then you will most probably learn something new and interesting.
So, I mean, you brought a few interesting points there. And just to try and zoom in on that, you talk to your customers, you use Zoom face to face, there's focus groups. What about social media? Are you active on social media, such as, LinkedIn, Facebook, and others to engage with your end customers?
We are. We mostly use Instagram to engage with people in the waiting list, and we share educational content there. Our business is an interesting business when it comes to a financial product, especially the one that has a credit element in it. It's extremely hard to use, for example, social media advertising, because first, it's going to be expensive. Second, there are lots of regulations around that. It's hard to put money behind any social media post to get in front of people. So for us, we're trying to go with word of mouth and referrals, and just by the pure virtue of speaking with people face to face, and even sometimes giving them gifts, sending them letters. We sent a gift back to Japan, for example, a month ago, because that person participated in our Instagram competition. By doing that, we encourage our current ambassadors to talk about us warmly with their friends, and then their friends come to us. A lot of conversations happen on indirect messaging, on emails as well, Slack. Yeah, so we're trying to be as close to them as possible. So they're not just followers or fans or people who like something in our social media, but they're real people. And we remember about that. Sometimes we hear, being a product that deals with money and lending, sometimes we hear very sad stories from our potential users, and we're trying to find ways to help them, even though the product is not launched yet, giving them advice, or sometimes, like helping for real. It's something that we try to do throughout building the product and now preparing for the launch, just staying as close to them as possible. So to answer your question more directly, yeah, we use social media, but it's not our primary channel when it comes to determining the product market fit or to getting feedback. We get feedback usually during our testing sessions.
Cool. As you guys scale and grow, how are you approaching investments, and more so from, again, how do you look at partners? Is it a process you go through that makes certain you leverage not only, the capital, but also potentially the knowledge and skills with inside, if it's a VC or VC?
I said no to a few investment offers just because the investors did not know what we wanted them to know. It's extremely important for us to get smart money to the company. I am personally not from the finance background, so we are leveraging a lot our investor network of people who come from banking, payments, and other industries which are close to our heart. When it comes to investments, up until now, we've been leveraging angel investors and also family offices and very small funds. Later on, we of course want to get into VCs, but even there, we will be very picky. We're picky with angel investors. We are going to be even more picky with VCs. It's the industry focus of the fund. It's how that specific investor also looks at our market. Microfinance, P2P lending, credit industries are so easy to make evil, if I can be blunt. For us, it's extremely important that the investors we are getting on board understand that and want to help us build an ethical business, which actually helps people. I heard so many investors telling me, yeah, why don't you increase the interest rate? Why don't you punish people in this and this way? Why don't you do that? Why don't you do this? And I usually turn away from this kind of investments and prefer not to take any money from them and go at my own pace rather than take the money, which will then potentially can destroy the company.
I love the way that you look at that, and kudos to you. It's important to get, not just money, but also, I think you touched on expertise and knowledge to align to your culture and ethics.
Yeah, and ethics is important, and many people forget about that. But we are dealing with youth, we're dealing with a different market, and the market has changed. The new generation has grown up, and people now are more educated than ever. So when you're building a product like that, you have to be aware of that, and of course, like, to keep updated on how young people actually, look at the world. Generation Z is different from millennials. It's different from Gen X, and it's different from baby boomers. It's just they are so much more educated. They're so smart and intelligent. They want to build healthy relationships with money. They don't want to overspend. They don't want to take credits. They hate credit cards. It's so interesting. Young people ditch credit cards. You will see that it's public data. Young people over and over again stop using credit cards and try to look for alternative methods to finance themselves. So it's a hard market to be in. And it's hard for me sometimes to explain to investors that, well, we are not dealing with stupid people here. We're dealing actually with an educated group of people. So you have to be aware of that and build your product, keeping that in mind.
Cool. And again, as you move and launch the product, how are you scaling and growing such that you make certain that you manage the growth of your core business together with other initiatives such as geographic expansion and all that stuff?
For the next couple of years, that path is very clear for us. We are going to the market with our partner called Neonomics. It's a company that created open banking APIs for us to connect to all Norwegian banks. They are now entering the UK and the Scandinavian market and other European countries. So we are going to grow together with them because they power our payments architecture to a large extent. So the money moves from one account to the other using their open banking APIs. So for us, it makes sense to grow together with them. I've seen their roadmap, and so far it aligns with our roadmap. And we will be going to the markets where they will be going. And for us, it's important because if we try to use a different payment architecture right now, then it's going to delay us to new markets. If we go with the existing partner, then the app is technically already ready to go to other markets. We only need to fix legalities in other countries. So that's the strategy, at least to go to European countries. When it comes to the US, that's a bit trickier because the US uses different banking rails, and we will probably need to look for alternative partners in that market. When we get there, that's probably going to be in a couple of years. I hope that our partner will also grow enough so that we could go together with them. If not, we will look for alternative solutions, and most probably the fintech scene in the US will also change by then.
Yeah, makes complete sense. And as you go forward over the next 12 months and obviously launch a product and then move on to your growth plans over the next 24 months, what challenges do you think you will have to overcome to achieve your near-term goals?
Legalities. I think the legal framework is the most difficult of all for us. Of course, there are also risks when it comes to what is going to be the default rate in different countries, because when you go to a different country with a different legal system, there's going to be, the default rates are going to be different, and how we can handle defaults will also be different country to country. That's definitely a risk. But that risk is within the legal landscape of a country. For example, in Norway, we don't need to have a license. We can only be registered and still operate. When we go to Sweden, which is a part of the European Union, then we need to have a license. Of course, we can get a license in one European country and then passport it to other countries, which also allows us to scale pretty quickly without a problem. But still, it takes time. Lawyers are great, but they're expensive. And everything takes time with lawyers as well because they want to do everything correctly. That can delay us as well. That's a risk I see. Also, trust. We are a new product in the market, and people are used to seeing other companies that in that industry, in P2P and microfinance, as evil companies. And even though we are not one of those, we are actually competitors to them when we want to take them out from the market. Still, there might be a perception that, well, this is just another microfinance organization or another company that wants to rip us off. Even though it's not true, the public perception is something that we need to be prepared for. And this is also another reason why we keep so close to our potential users and ask them about their opinions, because we want to be sure that we're not associated with the kind of companies that do all of this filthy things, which we don't want to be associated with.
Yeah. Clearly understand exactly what you're going for. And I guess part of that legal framework is also the plethora of regulation that comes with setting up different financial tech companies across, not just sort of Europe, but obviously also into the US. All those, sort of T's and C's need to be looked at and adhered to.
Absolutely. And it's hard.
Yeah.
But we'll get there. We have a plan, at least, on how to go together step by step. And we're not going alone. We have a great lawyer we're working with from DLA. So far, we have not seen these problems in our efforts in Norway. And we know how to tackle it in Europe. In the US, when it comes to establishing the organization in the US, it's not that hard. But when it comes to starting the operations, there it becomes difficult. Even when we do testing, I'll give you maybe another example so that it becomes maybe more clear to our listeners. When you're building a financial product, when it comes to testing, you have to be aware of the fact that if you go out and test a product without registration or license, if your company requires that, you're going to have problems. What we do, we test it in a testing environment, which is not public. So in our case, we use test flight on iOS and a build of an app, which is delivered directly to a person's phone to test the application and to get feedback from the users. Our app cannot be found online. People cannot download it. So only people who we know, people who are in our waiting list, people who signed an agreement of non-disclosure, who are aware of all the risks can participate in our testings. And when it comes to doing the same thing in a different jurisdiction, this is also a risk I see, because in Norway, it's okay to do this when it's just not public, when you release an app to a specific group of people. But when you go to the United States, this is something we still have not quite figured out yet. Are we able to test the application within a testing environment when it's not public with American users? This is something we will need to figure out before we actually go to the market and start building company there.
Cool. Some things to factor in as you move forward and grow your business. But right now, I mean, with you and your senior leadership team and maybe some of your close mentors, what difficult questions or challenges are you putting to yourself and factors that you're considering to continue on your growth trajectory?
Something that we discuss a lot is how we can quickly get a large number of users given the pandemic situation, but it's not related to how we build our product or how we get interest on the market, but more about how can we spread it as quickly as possible, given the fact that previously we wanted to collaborate with universities a lot. We wanted to go there to their place, to have a booth there and speak with students and have an ambassador program so that students could also, talk to their peers and get them to Lendonomy. Right now, universities are closing again, and we're at the verge of launching. We are preparing. We started collaborating with a recruitment agency to find those student ambassadors. And suddenly we see that universities started closing. And now we have to look at our strategies again about how can we still keep that close relationship with our potential users, with our testers, and make sure that they can also help us get more people on board. Because if we can't figure it out, then the growth is not going to be as rapid as we hope for. And this is something what we're talking about with our senior leadership team today.
Yeah, that's important. And also, obviously, part and parcel of the entrepreneur journey and the founder journey is continuous learning. So, on that question, what book or bit of documentation are you reading now or have just completed reading?
Got it. One of my investors gave me a fantastic book by Marty Kagan from Silicon Valley Product Group. It's called Inspired: How to Create Tech Products Customers Love. And I'm loving this book. It's amazing. So many insights on the mistakes that technology companies make, and how to build a product that people will enjoy, and how not to kill your team while they're being creative. Amazing book. I can definitely recommend it to all entrepreneurs and also to investors as well, because that book covers a lot, how also to enable entrepreneurs. And I think everybody will benefit from it. So I can definitely recommend it.
Oh, awesome. And, before we wind up today's discussion, how can people find you and your business? How can they get in touch?
We have a website. It's called lendonomy.io. We're also active on Instagram. Our handle is Lendonomy. And if you want to get in touch with me, it's my name, which is Anzhelika at lendonomy.io. Just be sure to spell it correctly. We're easily searchable. Google us, you'll find us.
Brilliant. I mean, thanks so much for giving us a glimpse into your world today. It's been fascinating, and I've really enjoyed the conversation.
Likewise. Thank you.